Greetings and welcome to this episode of Bring It On. My name is Bob Hayes and I'm going to be your show host for today's show. Today's show is going to be a little bit different from the norm that we do on Bring It On, and one of the reasons for this is we're trying to inform the residents of Whitman and Hanson about the student success budget. So I was really fortunate to have three people from the district come in today, and just so everyone knows, I am also the chairman of the school committee for equal disclosure, but I also host the show. So I thought it pertinent to bring in people to talk about this, so maybe some of the people in the community could get some of the questions answered that then they really want to hear answers for. So with me today I have the principal of Whitman-Hanson Regional High School, Jeff Szymiak. Jeff,
hi Bob, thanks for having me.
I have the superintendent of schools, Dr. Ruth Gilbert Whitner. Ruth, how are you?
Good to see you, Bob.
And I also have the principal, Karen Downey. She's the principal at the Conley School on Forest Street. Karen, how are you? It's good to see you.
Good, Bob. Thanks.
Thank you all for coming. As you know, as I open the show, and I do with each one, we try to make them as formative as we possibly can make them, so people will get a better understanding of what's going on at Whitman-Hanson. Because there are myths and there are questions, and when you start talking about a $3 million student success budget, it is problematic because it affects people's money. It affects where they're going, and a lot of these people are on fixed incomes. But I think when they get a better idea of exactly what's going on, they may answer some of the questions. So I guess my first question would be, how did we come up with a student success budget? I mean, a lot of people are asking questions of, where did the student success budget come from? How did we get it all put together and be a functionality issue of how the schools run? How did we get to where we are? And so Ruth, would you like to start with that?
Sure, I'll be happy to start, and Jeff and Karen may have some things they want to add. The budget process begins in Whitman-Hanson every fall. And annually we go to principals, to directors, to coordinators, and we find out what we really need in terms of funding for our school system. And this is what we've been doing every fall, year after year. But what has happened is when we do present the budget to the school committee in the wintertime, we've found over time that we don't have the revenue to keep up with the costs that we've needed for our school system. And as a result, Whitman-Hanson, in terms of per pupil funding, is in the bottom 3% in the entire Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So as we approach the budget season this time, we felt we needed to look at this in a different way. So we approached the budget by looking at two components. One we call the level services component. This is a component that really looks at what would it cost to educate our students next year in exactly the same way we're educating them this year. In doing that, we have to take into consideration increase in salaries, increases in contracts, utilities, transportation, the things that go up in everybody's budget. We also have to look at considerations such as compliance for special education. And when we did that, we saw that a level services budget was up by $1.4 million, or a little over 2%.
Ruth, can I just for one second
sure.
stop you, just because I know that at certain times, from being the chair of the school committee and explaining this to people, the level services budget means the budget, and as you explained in the beginning, but the budget that it was last year, identical to last year, with its nominal increases for gas, for oil, for heat, just like your house,
your household
packages
budget. Exactly.
do, and for salaries.
Right.
Okay.
So what a level services budget would mean, we can do next year what we're doing this year, but there would be nothing new. We would not open the elementary libraries. Those would still remain closed. Our student-teacher ratio would stay the same. We would not be able to replace aging equipment, aging resources. We just stay where we are. This was concerning to our leadership group. Being 10th from the bottom in per pupil expenditures does not make us competitive with school systems around us where they're being able to offer their students more. And we're very concerned that our students grow up to become globally competitive and future ready. So in doing that, we work together to say, well, what do we think we need? Typically we've done this, we've sent it to school committee, and it's been an increase in the budget, and we spend the entire winter cutting and cutting the budget. And this year's budget, the budget for 2015-16, is a perfect example of that, is an increase of 0.8%. This year we don't even have a level services budget from last year. And I think we all believe something needed to happen. We are in a very interesting district planning process with the Department of Education, and that allowed our team to focus on what we really believed the whole child needs from preschool through grade 12. And in doing so, we used the number $3 million because our increases actually looked more like $10 or $12 million when we asked our administrators what they thought we really needed. But $3 million, okay, that's a great start. It starts to bring Whitman Hanson out of the bottom. Student success budget is a product of the input of our leadership team, our administrative team, and the input of the entire staff of the Whitman Hanson Regional School District. In December, we sent a survey out to all of them, and we said, what do you think it needs to educate the children of Whitman and Hanson? And this went to everyone. It went to teachers, it went to support personnel, it went to facilities, technology, food services. Everybody got a say. And when that happened, we met as a team, and that's how we came up with the student success budget. A long answer to your question, but I think it's important for our taxpayers to know this is not something that was done just quickly overnight. This is a process that took a lot of input, a lot of thoughtful planning.
Okay, hinging off of that last statement, I think it's important for the townspeople and the taxpayers to know who are the leadership team, what are they comprised of? I know this because I'm the chair of the school committee, and I know that you guys meet every week, usually the beginning of the week, to discuss what's going on in the district. But I think it's important for the people to know. Sure. Again, going back to the success budget, I know that you didn't pull it out of the air. It wasn't something that was a wish list, as I've heard on the internet and seen. It was a bunch of people that are on a leadership team, and it kind of explained to the
Sure.
viewers
We have
who it is.
multiple leadership teams. Every Monday morning, the central office administrative team meets. This includes Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Safety and Security, Director of Food Services, Director of Technology, Director of Facilities, Director of Business Services. We meet once a week. Every 2 weeks, we meet with what we call the leadership team. That includes all 7 building principals, the 4 curriculum coordinators in the core areas, and the directors that I just mentioned before. So we meet regularly. Then there is a full administrative team, which includes all of the assistant principals, director of guidance, people of that nature. So we have multiple teams that meet. So when we say this student success budget is the product of the work of a lot of people, I'm talking about 45 or 50 people who got together and worked on this. But as I said, it wasn't in a vacuum. It was in getting input from the entire staff in the district.
So all of these people get together, all of the different administrators, whether it be building administrators or whether it be parts of the internal administration, and they get together and they come up with, this is what we need, this is what we've lost over the years, this is where we are with the students, and you even discuss and get into the depth of the student education, where we're heading, the whole plan of the district, because we have a district plan, and goals that we have as principals. I mean, Karen, you're involved in these meetings, and you've seen me. I come in and occasionally sit through one of them. What do you think? Pretty extensive? I mean...
Very, and I think back to, as Dr. Whitner said, we talk about even it coming from the building level. So at the building level, twice a month we meet with our staff, and the staff were asked, 3 years from now, what would you like to see our district look like? And they were able to really visualize. We'd like to see smaller class sizes, we'd like to see technology, all of the things that are on that list. We'd like to see full day kindergarten. And so I brought that back from Conley School, as all the principals did. We sat, we went through those lists, and everybody had an opinion. Everybody got to provide input and feedback. So it was a very long process, well thought out. And I think I mentioned at our school budget meeting, it's not the Cadillac of budgets either. There are a lot of other things that we would also like to see. But we know that money is still tight, and we're still trying to fit in the most important things to make a big difference for the kids who sit in front of us every day.
Karen, you touched on one thing. Jeff, I'll get to you in a second.
Sure.
You touched on one thing that I think is a very hot topic, and you can touch on it briefly, and then I'm going to skip right through the middle school, because the middle school guy got to go home. He got a pass. But that's not happening for the next show.
Right.
And we'll go right to high school. How is the importance? A lot of people don't think that all-day K is important. I hear the statement, and I hear it all the time, whether I'm in the store or wherever I go, it's babysitting, it's daycare, we don't need it. Tell me why you need it. Convince me. I want to hear it.
Okay. Well, so just today we were able to have our grandparents in, and our kindergartners were reading to their grandparents. When you think back to when we all went to kindergarten, we were learning how to color, we were playing, and some of those things still happen, but our kindergartners are learning how to read. And the problem is that full-day kindergarten gives kids a very rich experience. They're working on numeracy, they're working on literacy, they are learning how to read, they have sight words. And what happens is that in a half-day program, you're taking that full day and you're just squishing it into 2.5 hours. By the time kids come in and we go through a calendar and have a literacy lesson, phonics, math, it's time to go. The full-day kindergarten kids are getting wellness, they're getting music, they're getting art. They are playing. We still believe that play is an important component of kindergarten for those social skills. If you walk in, you'll see a housekeeping area or a cash register store area. Those are important things for our little 5-year-olds to know how to do, and to how to interact with each other, how to resolve problems. And so that full day, it's just a very rich experience. And the kids, and if your parents can pay for it, then you can afford it. You can go, you can have that great experience. Unfortunately, all the kids need that. There are so many working parents and so many parents who just, we have kids in full day, so those play opportunities are really important. So I would say it's not just a richer, fuller experience. It's what I think about what the half-day kids are not getting, and how we're trying to really just get all that information in their heads in that short period of time.
Jeff.
So I've been waiting to talk.
We're in trouble now.
No, so you had mentioned something about the education of a child. And I think what we have to look at now is how we educate the whole child. And Karen just talked about full day K. Kids are much different than they were 10 years ago. Kids are dealing with a lot of different stuff out on social media, with their peer group, with parents at home. It's just much different than the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. We have to go really dive into how kids are functioning so that everyone can be successful. I get to see the tail end of a lot of great work at our elementaries and a lot of great work at our middles. And I support the student success piece of this budget, even though the high school really doesn't get much of the piece of the pie, because I truly believe that when we educate our kids with some social workers and some help, with more teachers and smaller class sizes, every child will have the opportunity to really flourish. And when they get to me in 9th grade, we will be able to push them even further than what we have now. Less remediation, less extra help at night. We can start to look at what our kids need for a global economy and being a true 21st century student. Things that we right now do, but are a little bit reserved because some of our kids aren't ready yet. And to piggyback on the full day K, personally, both my kids have had full day K. Both my wife and I work, we're both in education. Both my kids in kindergarten, my daughter right now gets homework every day. It is not babysitting. I wish it was a little bit more fun. I think full kindergarten now is challenging. And I think students that don't get that full day opportunity are missing out on some things. And what I would hate to have in this community is the have and have-nots. Mm-hmm. Because you can pay for it, your kids are a little bit more advanced, and because you can't, you're a little bit behind the 8 ball, so to speak. So I think the budget that we put together and the leadership team, and I would love to stress to the community, it's a great team. It's a great team to work for. All the principals trust each other. We trust our central office, and we're all looking to make sure that we give our kids, and when I say our kids, I believe this, the best opportunity to be successful. And when I graduate our 278 on June 3rd, I think we put out a great product. And I can't wait, it's the best day of the year for me, to see those kids move on to their futures. And when they come back and say, we've been prepared, we've been this is what we wish we could have had. Maybe we could have had some of those electives, those art classes, which I'm hoping to get back in our success budget. That's what I want. And to see those smiles in the parents, that's what we all have for. And that's a K-12 piece. And we trust each other. We've put everything on the table, and we're hoping that the community supports that.
Well, when you talk about graduation, we're still talking about 2 hours or less, right?
Yeah,
We're
you
trying
got it.
to make the record.
I'm under 157.
So the speeches have to be
You got it.
shorter and shorter.
That
Okay, we're talking again about the success budget, and do you know, and I'm quoting this from Abraham Lincoln, I was just reading a book, he said, if you teach the children you won't have to teach the adults. Isn't that so true in today's world? And that's a quote from Abraham Lincoln many, many years ago, long before we were around. Back to the student success budget. We talked about 32 new positions. And it was stressed in the town of Hanson more than it was in the town of Whitman about picking it apart and maybe that the community thought we shouldn't have this or we should have that or we should have this or we shouldn't have that. And it's a very difficult road to go down where I'm headed right now. But after you spoke about the leadership team and the educational value that all of you bring to the table and what you do, because you're all licensed and you're all talking and you're with the students every day, I'm going to take a giant leap and say that I think your ability to judge what we need the teachers on these 32 positions might be a little bit more in depth than the community members would have. So they've all asked, why do you need 2 social workers? Why do you need, out of the 32, why do you need them all? And if you've got the list, we can quickly go down them because, as you know, we're already halfway through. We can quickly go down and kind of explain why we need these people. Because I think it's important for the community to have a good idea of what we're doing. A lot of people think that they kind of got shut down or shut out at town meeting, that was heard because they couldn't pick through the budget. Let's go through it and talk about the positions. Ruth?
Yeah, one of the things we've done, Bob, that I think is helpful to people as well is we've put together this community guide for understanding the budget. And in that, we've actually broken down the components of the student success budget to try to help the public understand why those decisions were made. One of the first things are 8 elementary classroom teachers. That was put into the budget because of concerns about student-teacher ratio. We have situations in the district where there are certain bubbles where class size is larger than it should be. And by adding 8 elementary classroom teachers, we will be able to balance class size across the district, keeping it at a level of 20 or under in the first and second grades, and for 3, 4, and 5, 25 and under, which is far more manageable. Today we educate everyone. A lot of people may say to us, well, when I was in school, there were this many or that many in my class. I was actually in a 6th grade class of 37 many, many years ago. But things have changed, and we're required to educate everyone, and the standards are high. So the addition of 8 classroom teachers is part of that 32, and one that I think also ties into your quote from Abraham Lincoln, because I believe that the student success budget is an investment. It's an investment in the future. By implementing that budget, it's going to cost people less in the future. Students in a smaller class size do not slip through the cracks. Their academic needs are met early on in their education when there's still an opportunity to meet those benchmarks and find out where the misunderstandings are. Full day kindergarten is another one. That adds additional positions. We need to add 2 to be able to implement full day K. Some of our K is paid through our tuition, so we'd have to wean ourselves off of that. But that's where 10 of those positions are right there. 8 elementary classroom teachers and 2 for the full day kindergarten. I'd like to turn to Karen for a minute because she understands class size at the elementary probably better than anyone.
We currently have probably about 26 kids in a 2nd grade classroom. And I want you to just imagine, if you can for a second, 27 7 and 8-year-olds. How do you gain their attention? How do you keep them engaged? And you do that by having them in small groups. We divide and conquer, you know. A small group, and our small groups have gone from 4 or 5 students to 7 or 8 students in a small group. That every time you add a child, it's less face time for the child. And we are trying to do, as Dr. Whitner said, we're trying to identify what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses. We've got to get these kids reading, and reading really well. So class size is important. In my 4th grade, I just added in another student 2 or 3 weeks ago to have 29 students in a 4th grade classroom. Same size classrooms as those 2nd grade classrooms, bigger bodies, and a lot more to do. So it's a really difficult task for these teachers. I want to say that our teachers make it work. They make it work every day. They will stand on their heads to get these kids to be engaged and be excited about their learning. But having a few extra kids in the class would certainly benefit everybody, but mostly those kids, to look at a teacher face to face every day, to be reading with that teacher, to be doing some math with that teacher, to be writing with that teacher, and to be showing what your thinking is in your problem solving. It's critical. It is critical. I know a lot of people say class size doesn't matter. Good teaching is good teaching, but class size matters. It really does.
And I think it really matters when students need to reach their literacy and numeracy benchmarks. There's research that shows if students haven't learned to read at grade level by age 7, they probably won't, and they're going to require a tremendous amount of remediation. So the combination of the positions for full-day kindergarten plus really looking at elementary class size was a total priority for our group when we put together the student success budget. There's also an addition of 2 social workers, one in Whitman, one in Hanson, and we've spoken, I'm sure you've heard at school committee meetings passionately from our principals. You've heard from them saying that our students are coming today with needs and challenges very different from anything we've ever seen before. I just came from a wellness steering committee where we were talking just about the issues that we're dealing with and how we need to be able to get to students and to work with them and to work with their families when they're still young before these students get bigger and bigger. As they used to say, little people, little problems, big people, big problems. So 2 of the positions are social workers. We have some social workers in the district, but they're grant funded and that grant goes away in 1 year. Our hope would be over time to add additional social workers so that they're available in each elementary school because that support is absolutely needed. So that touches on some of the positions.
Jeff, the student success budget, how does it affect the high school?
Right now in the high school, I have 1.2, which is 1 teacher and Mr. Dondero comes in 1 period a day to teach 1,200 kids music. We're looking at adding an additional music teacher, and I have 2 art teachers for the 1,200. We're looking at adding an additional art teacher. Just historically, and I'll give perspective, I was a principal of a 7 through 12 building with 600 students. I had 2.5 art teachers, and I had 2 full-time music teachers for a population half the size of my building now. So adding those positions, although people might think they're a little fluff, I have kids that desperately need an outlet outside of academics. I have honor roll kids, I have AP kids, advanced placement kids that are in my art classes now that they have a creative side. And without an additional teacher to be able to bring out some of that creativity, they're not getting the full education that that I would like to provide. When I talked about the whole child, it's not just about the A, B's, and C's. It's about exploring art, it's about listening to music, it's about exploring your talents when you're in your high school. Geez, if I had the Cadillac of budget, I would like to double my culinary program. I'd like to bring in some mechanical engineering, things like that. Those are things we couldn't ask for. We wanted to be realistic, but those are things that we desperately need in the high school to make sure that all of our kids have a well-rounded education. Because some of our advanced placement kids might actually go to an art school later on. It's just, they're testing the waters, and that's what high school is all about, trying some things out, seeing what you like to do and what career you might want to pursue.
Teaching the whole child.
Teaching the whole child.
This is another question that's come up quite frequently. Why all or nothing? Why do we want a $3 million success budget and it's all or nothing? It seems like that was one of the big things at town meeting, and it was one of the big things leading up to town meeting is, why does the school have to do all or nothing? Why can't we hire 4 teachers here, 2 teachers here, and then go next year and hire 1 social worker here and 1 art teacher here? Why is it?
I can answer that very easily. As I mentioned earlier in the program, we don't even have a level service budget this year. Those are the things that we have been cutting year after year. We have the student success component of the budget for transparency. This year we have no elementary librarians. We share a librarian between the 2 middle schools, and we have 1 at the high school. Last year we spoke to the public about our budget. We said we're going to have to close our elementary librarians, and nobody heard us. Nobody even paid attention until the lights were off and the door was closed. The student success budget is there for transparency. Hey folks, these are the things we cut every single year. Principal Szymiak, Principal Downey will come to our budgets meetings and may say we need an art teacher, we need a music teacher, we need more classroom teachers. And every winter and spring, cut, because we didn't have the revenue to pay for it. I think it was the most transparent way to show our taxpayers This is what we've been cutting year after year after year. So it was done this way because in the past we couldn't get anywhere. And I think it's important to give our taxpayers the opportunity to say, yes, this is what we want, or no, it isn't. But this is what we keep cutting, and I think we've finally gotten people's attention. That's the reason.
Okay. Another big question, and I know I seem to be focusing on Ruth. Maybe her and I should have done a little preliminary and let you guys go home. But a lot of people will say, you know, this all or nothing issue comes up, and it almost stagnates the whole budget. And they'll talk about, well, you didn't lose that many positions. Some people retired. Well, what is a retirement if you don't replace it?
And we've been doing that year after year.
I mean, Jeff, you've had some retirements. Can you explain that?
I've had retirements, and I've had to lay people off. I've lost people because of the threat of laying people off, and we haven't been able to replace teachers. Even though, again, the student success piece doesn't influence me as much, I haven't been able to replace people that have been gone since 2007, 2008. So I can't give you a figure of how many teachers the high school has lost, but it's in the double digits that we haven't been able to replace through retirement or through people just matriculating out to another district. And it has affected, and we talked about class size. At the high school, class size can be very different. The eyeball test says we have an average class size of about 24, but I might have an advanced placement European history class of 15 and an honors English class of 30. And that'll put us right in the ballpark of a 22 or 23 average class size. I cannot offer an advanced placement course for kids that want to take that, or I might have a special education class of 10 because that's what the law requires, but that's average into our class size. So it really depends upon where we put our money, and I think it's important that we use money to the best we can. But I haven't been able to replace people that we lost way back when, even prior to my tenure at Whitman Hanson.
Karen?
When I spoke earlier about my fourth grade classroom that had 29 students in it, how that came to be was a fourth grade teacher retired. We weren't able to replace her. And we didn't even talk about librarians at the elementary level. I know that we're going to wrap up pretty quickly, but I would just like to put out there that elementary school is all about literacy. And when I walk by and see my library doors closed and dark, it upsets me that we have a collection of books as well as a computer lab where we had a professional who could help us manage that with the classroom and teach kids how to research and how to be computer literate. And I think that's we need to look at that of all places, elementary needs a librarian.
Well, I want to thank all three of you for coming. It goes pretty quick, and I've got to wrap it up right now. So, ladies and gentlemen, as always, Bring It On is a show that is for the community. It's sponsored by Whitman Hanson Cable Association, and we're here to answer your questions. If you have any school questions, you can call Dr. Whitner at the high school. You can speak with any of the principals. They'll be more than happy. Or you can call me on my phone at 617-538-0189. And please, call and ask. It's the only way you're going to get an answer. It's how you get a better education about how these three people give an education to your students that live in these communities. And I can't say anything other than I wouldn't want to live in any other place than Whitman and Hanson. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.